Okay, gentlemen, we're going to be dividing everybody up into two groups. Rip and Ron, you're going to be in group one. You're going to be heading to the north and meeting down at the river, taking the ravine to the river. And group two is Rich and Mike. You're going to be heading to the east. Randy, you're going to be up on the roof of the vehicle. You're going to be pretty much back up listening with the parabolic microphone. Okay. And I want you to alert the guys if there's any sounds coming from around them. Okay, that should do it. We're looking at about a 2-hour expedition tonight. Should meet up here about 12 o'clock midnight.
Since the end of the 1950s, the Bigfoot has become the most hunted mythical monster in the USA. Hundreds of eyewitnesses claim to have met the Bigfoot or to have seen the enormous footprints which give it its name. This huge wild man, close to primates, gives off a powerful, repugnant smell. His body is covered with brown hair. Sightings have been reported in most North American states. A May evening in the forests of Virginia, the International Bigfoot Society team is out hunting. William Dranginis has actually met the Bigfoot. Since that meeting, he has become a dedicated tracker. On board his Bigfoot mobile, he remains in direct video contact with the other hunters hidden in the search area. The batteries of heat-sensitive cameras make it possible to see what's going on in almost total darkness.
Ron, do you copy?
Ron to base. We are at the river. We have negative contact at this time.
We're proceeding on to the next checkpoint, over.
Okay, that sounds good. I got you on the thermal monitor. Everything looks clear. There's no other animals or people around you, so continue on. Over.
Perched on the roof of the Bigfoot mobile, Randy broadcast a recorded cry of a Bigfoot to try to get the creature to react. Rich and Mike are making their way through the forest. Their infrared camera has sensed something.
I got two eyes. As soon as I get closer, I'll let you know what it is.
Team 2, I have some video from down in your location. Could you please respond? No, you're breaking up. I can't hear you.
Yeah, this is their den.
No, you're still breaking up. The image is gone now. I can't see anything.
Never mind, they're just fox. False alarm. It's 3 baby fox.
Okay, yes, I do have you now.
Copy that.
Since my sighting, my whole life has changed. I've devoted myself pretty much into trying to find this creature. The more time I spend trying to locate it, the more I want to leave it alone. But as human nature has it, I'm very inquisitive, and I want to search for answers.
Back home after another night's hunting, William checks out the equipment he has specially designed to track the Bigfoot. William is a technician for one video monitoring company, but his Bigfoot mobile is better equipped than a TV station. On the roof, he has installed 2 thermal imaging cameras. The camera, attached to a 9-meter mast, can film in a full circle around the truck. He also has several other portable thermal imaging and infrared cameras on board, and a gun firing hypodermic darts to put the animal to sleep. You can never be too careful. In the great tradition of famous inventors, William develops and improves his detection gadgets in his own garage. He believes he knows why no one has yet caught a Bigfoot.
I believe these creatures could actually hear into the ultrasonic range. Most of electronic equipment today produces ultrasonic sounds that humans can't hear, but I do believe the Bigfoot can hear. Since that time, I've developed some systems that I will deploy into the woods that will cancel out the electronic noise, so to speak, so the Bigfoot won't be able to hear those noises and hopefully get them on film.
William has mapped the sightings of the Bigfoot in the region based on the many eyewitness reports he receives. He intends to explore all the zones and dedicate his life to finding this animal, shadowboxing with the Bigfoot. It was zoologist Bernard Heuvelmans who invented the science of cryptozoology back in the 1950s. Cryptozoology focuses on the quest for unknown animals. The objective is to prove the existence of animals that traditional sciences refuse to accept. Among the animals which Heuvelmans studies, hominids take pride of place. Several zoologists in the world are now trying to discover and define unknown animals in a systematic way. In fact, we founded a new science, which Anderson and I called cryptozoology, or the science of hidden animals. How do we study them? By the tracks, trails and signs they leave in nature. For example, there are hundreds of eyewitness accounts concerning the abominable snowman, the Yeti. Why have so many extraordinary creatures been reported at so many different places on Earth? For example, the Bigfoot in North America, the Yeren in China, the Bar-Manu in Pakistan, the Almasti in the Caucasus, the Ingoirung in Vietnam, the Yowie in Australia, the Kikomber in Africa, the Orang Pendek in Sumatra, and the famous Yeti in Tibet, the cry of which is familiar to so many Sherpas. So, imagination or reality? In some cases, so-called proof has been disproved, like this photo of a Yeti, which turned out to be a rock. In 1920, Swiss anthropologist François Lois, on a mission to Brazil, presented his discovery, the Ameranthropoid, the man-monkey of Amazonia, to the scientific community. But it turned out to be a pitiful hoax. In 1968, the case of the frozen man caught the attention of the press all over the world. This was an attraction presented in fun fairs in America by a certain Frank Hansen. Heuvelmans and his colleague Sanderson examined the creature and declared the relic to be a Neanderthal man, a prehistoric man in the 20th century. For the first time, science possessed a body which could prove that wild men exist. But Hansen took fright, and the evidence disappeared. Heuvelmans failed to convince other scientists. The frozen man mystery was never solved. In 1967, a unique cryptozoological document caused a sensation. This was the first film of a Bigfoot shot by Roger Patterson and Robert Gimlin in Bluff Creek, Northern California. In Los Angeles, Peter Byrne, one of the most famous Bigfoot hunters, is very familiar with this mythical film. He's convinced it's not a fake.
I think it's an authentic piece of footage of an unknown primate. When I took it to Disney Studios years ago, they said that's a marvelous piece of footage. Patterson was not capable of creating something like that. I don't think he was.
Peter Byrne has spent his whole life as an explorer in the pure English tradition. He's passionately interested in wild animals. His many expeditions took him to India, Africa, and especially Tibet, looking for the Yeti. On his return to the United States, he focused on the Bigfoot in Patterson's film. In 1972, Byrne returned to the exact place where Patterson shot his film and took several photographs there, positioning his assistant and a ruler to measure distances in the place where the animal had passed. In this way, he was able to estimate the animal's height. Apparently, the Bigfoot is over 7 feet tall. His initial conclusions were used as the basis for the scientific study run by the NASI, a scientific research organization specially created to analyze the film between 1995 and 1998. To extend Byrne's conclusions, Nessie scientists carefully studied frames from the film to try to estimate the size of the foot sole from the dimensions of a branch on the ground. With these two elements, the researchers stated that the Bigfoot measured over 2 meters and 22 centimeters in height, that its chest is over 2 meters 10 centimeters in circumference, and that it weighs 880 kilos. These dimensions cannot be those of a man. The conclusion of the report is clear. If it is not a man, it must be an unknown primate resembling a man.
Not long before he died, Roger Patterson, he said to me, because he was very bitter about the fact that nobody believed him. Everybody thought the film was faked. And he said to me, you know, Peter, we should have shot that thing. then we would have had a body, and then people would have believed us.
At Florida University, David Daegling and Daniel Schmidt, two specialists in the locomotion of primates, have a very different view of Patterson's film.
This was a film that was taken in 1967. The guy was pretty far away. He was chasing after this thing. You can see it heading off. And you'll see the guy it walks along, it looks behind apparently, and walks along with a real steady flow. People have described this creature as gliding along. So one of the things that's been claimed about the film is that nobody, no human who was trying to fake this could walk with as long a stride or as fast as that creature was on the videotape. So let's look at Dr. Daegling here, just walking with a normal gait. You'll see he has a small little stride, his body rises up and down just like yours and mine does, and he'll walk back, and he can only go about 2.5 meters per second before he's got to break into a jog. But if he changes just one thing about his gait, if he just lets his knees flex down when he goes, go ahead, he can stretch out his stride and change the speed he walks at and the stride he walks at. A person dressed up in a suit could mimic the speed and the stride that this Bigfoot supposedly has, and so that based on simple scientific principles, if you have two equal conclusions, one that you've got a Bigfoot and the other it's a person in a Bigfoot suit, and they're equal, you take the simplest one, the one that is more reasonable to be believed, which is to say that Dave could have dressed up in a Bigfoot suit, and so could all of you. So what we've learned today is that by changing your gait, anyone can be a Bigfoot. And now it means that now it's your turn to go out there and be big feet.
There have been two scales that have been used to
For
estimate...
Dr. David Daegling, the Nessie arguments do not hold water. How can you believe in the existence of a creature weighing 880 kilos, 5 times the weight of an adult male gorilla?
The problem is
He says that the branch the Bigfoot steps over, which was used as the reference to make the measurements, was not filmed perfectly perpendicular to the camera, which automatically distorts its length.
going to be different than its actual length. A pretty good costume is the way we'd conclude this.
So once we establish that there's nothing on this film you can measure reliably, it means that we can't tell how large this creature was. So we can't rule out a hoax hypothesis. The only thing you can tell from this film, the only thing this film proves, is that the sun was shining at Bluff Creek that afternoon.
Can unknown primates really exist? One of the answers to this enigma would come from ichnology, the science of foot and fingerprints.
Nice.
14 or DPS 2515 have a major accident.
8206 headquarters. We have a homicide at this location. I need you to send out a crime scene unit for fingerprints.
Do it.
Police officer Jimmy Chilcutt is the Texas Prince star.
What we got?
Have a homicide. She's in the living room.
Jimmy Chilcutt is the guy they call in at once to lift fingerprints for homicides and drug busts. He uses his experience to take the prints of primates. He has a collection of several hundred.
Oh, thank you. Oh, another Bigfoot package. Thank you very much.
Have a nice day.
One day while I was taking some fingerprints from monkeys, one of the doctors asked me why. Without thinking, I jokingly said, well, there was a banana theft at the grocery store, and I'm looking for a suspect.
Jimmy Chilcutt started to get interested in Bigfoot prints when he saw a TV film. He obtained several unidentified casts from the specialist for examination. One of these prints convinced him that an unknown primate is living in the United States. He's tried to persuade other police officers to no avail.
This is a human footprint. You'll notice that the ridges run horizontally across the width of the foot. On a primate, such as a gorilla, you'll notice the ridges run diagonally across the side of the foot. On this Bigfoot casting, you'll notice that the ridges run vertically down the length of the foot. This does not occur in humans or in non-human primate. This proves that this cast is from an unknown species of primate.
Studying the cast of the footprint, Jimmy Chilcutt discovered a disconcerting fact which dispelled any remaining doubts.
One of the casts I examined had scars, and actually the scars were healed. And it's virtually impossible to fake a healed scar.
For Jimmy Chilcott, human and animal prints are a secret story he decodes under the digital scrutiny of his two children. Animals don't stay unknown to the local populations who live nearby. They find them well before Western scientists. For example, the pygmies in the Congo told the explorer Stanley about the okapi in 1889. They called it the oapi. A survivor from prehistoric times, the coelacanth was only caught for the first time by South African scientists in 1938. But the fishermen in the Comoros Islands know it as kombesa. They use its prickly scales as rasps to mend punctures in their bike tires. The white-backed Indian tapir, officially observed for the first time in 1816, appeared in Chinese manuscripts 2,000 years before. The Komodo dragon can grow to over 3 meters in length. It was reported in 1912 by an aviator who crash-landed on this Indonesian island. He was lucky not to be gobbled up by this huge meat-eating lizard. The mountain gorilla was scientifically described for the first time in 1847. The Angola natives called it the pongo. The megamouth is a giant shark discovered in Hawaii in 1976, but only 8 specimens have been reported to date. First recorded in 1772, the oarfish is a member of the herring family, which can reach 14 feet in length. It was not until 1936 that a giant panda could be seen in Europe, but it was in Chinese manuscripts for many centuries before. For the Indians of Canada, the Sasquatch, the wild man of the forest, is a sacred creature sent by the gods to announce the arrival of awesome events.
Look at this cast now.
Biologist John Bindernagel tracks the Sasquatch in the forest of Vancouver Island. A well-known wildlife specialist, particularly interested in primates, John found his first footprints of the creature at the end of the 1980s. Since then, he's been looking for the animal all over Vancouver Island and often takes his small daughter Kendra along.
Well, anyway, this is a sort of forest where a person could possibly see a Sasquatch. There's the river right over there and the low swampy area here. It's pretty wet, lots of food.
What food do Sasquatches eat?
Well, they eat mainly vegetation, I think, berries, roots, leaves, that sort of thing, but also some meat, shellfish, hibernating ground squirrels, deer, ducks, waterfowl.
Although John has collected over 3,000 eyewitness reports and several casts of footprints, his biologist colleagues still think he's an eccentric. Despite everything, he's still trying to convert them to the Sasquatch, but somewhat unsuccessfully.
It's very interesting, the scientific community, and especially my colleagues in wildlife biology. They'll discuss all sorts of wildlife issues with me, but not this one, not the Sasquatch. It's just a taboo subject. And I'm working very hard to bring this subject into mainstream wildlife management and biology, where I believe it belongs. It appears that scientists do require bones and a hide before they're really going to seriously consider this subject. The absence of Sasquatch bones isn't nearly so surprising as people think. I think of my own career in doing wildlife surveys in Western North America. I've only found 2 bear skulls in all those years. Only, maybe several dozen deer skeletons and deer bones, but that's not many compared to the thousands of deer that are out there.
John now wants to extend his quest for the Sasquatch to the Vancouver Island coastline. During the night, many fishermen have heard strange howls, and some have discovered gigantic footprints near their seafood stores. Will the Sasquatch finally be trapped by its love of seafood? Scientists do not always agree when a new animal is discovered. The body of a marine monster was washed up on St. Augustine Beach in Florida on November the 30th, 1896. All the evidence seems to indicate it was a gigantic octopus.
Octopus giganteus virile, that's the name of the named it. December 1896. And there are several pieces. Here's one piece.
What piece? It doesn't smell as good. Sort of like sour something or
sour.
Bitter. What's slimy and smelled like vinegar.
Can you imagine if it was a giant octopus, how much that would be? Sure, let's lift it up, lift it up. Here is 75 foot on the real giant octopus, 75 foot on the other arm, 50 feet in the center, so that if it was really stretched out on the beach the way we are now, can you imagine it would go from here all the way down the beach to the end, way to the last red shirt.
When the odd beast was discovered, all the eyewitnesses and the press were sure it was a giant octopus. However, the scientific community is still trying to decide whether it was a whale, a cachalot, a squid, or a giant octopus, Octopus giganteus. Dr. Webb of St. Augustine, the only scientist to have actually seen the remains of the animal, defended the octopus theory strongly until his death. More than a century later, researchers continue to investigate the mystery. In Paris, cryptozoologist and biologist Michel Reynal obtained a sample of the animal and analyzed it in 1984. One day, American biochemist Roy Mackal gave me 4 samples, one of which was a piece of the Florida Octopus giganteus. I defined a research protocol based on detecting the presence of copper and iron because cetaceans have a lot of iron and very little copper, and cephalopods have a lot of copper and very little iron. I carried out the analyses at Aix-Marseille University and was very pleased with the results. The sample really did come from an octopus, and probably an Octopus giganteus. In Florida, Professor Gennaro reached the same conclusion after several other analyses, but today he wants to go further with the help of University of Florida genetics specialist Dr. Clark. These days, it's possible for scientists to ask a huge database on the internet to identify a genetic sequence and say from which species of animal the DNA comes. But our 2 cyber detectives were in for a surprise. The 99% reliable database quickly revealed the identity of the mysterious animal. It was a Cyprinodon variegatus, a fish under 3 centimeters in length. Professor Gennaro does not agree.
What we have here, the DNA says, does not resemble an octopus, does not resemble a squid, certainly does not resemble a whale, and as a matter of fact, is unique into itself, is something that probably we have never seen before.
On a night like this.
In Veracruz, 3 young Mexican fishermen caught a marine monster which over several years has seized many victims on local beaches. This hideous animal has an eye on each end of its hammer-shaped head. Since man has traveled the seas and oceans, the existence of extraordinary creatures and legendary monsters have stirred the imagination. But truth can be stranger than legends. Quite regularly, giant squids are washed up on the beaches of northern Spain. According to several Spanish scientists, the cause is underwater explosions from offshore oil and gas drilling rigs. Unlike the oceans, lakes have never cast up their mythical monsters. Loch Ness contains the most famous monster in the world. The lake is 39 kilometers long and contains 7 billion cubic meters of water. Steve Feltham, the solitary hunter of the Loch Ness monster, lives in a caravan on the banks.
When I was a 7-year-old on a family holiday, fell in love with the location, the place, the mystery. The fact that there was people hunting for monsters in Loch Ness amazed me, and the interest just grew and grew. In 1991, I sold my house, I quit my job, and I set up here, and I've been up here for now 10 years, nearly 11 years, watching and waiting, trying to spot whatever's in this loch.
To pursue his research program, Steve set up home in a strategic place on the lake, in Urquhart Bay, where Nessie seems to spend a lot of time. The legend of Nessie, the Loch Ness monster, starts with a famous photograph taken by Dr. Wilson in 1933. Loch Ness madness reached its peak then. Crowds of curious lake watchers turned up and scores of every kind of explorer tried to prove the existence of the monster of the lake. In 1960, Tim Dinsdale was the first to film the wake of an enormous unidentified swimming creature. Gigantic cages were specifically manufactured and submarines dived into the murky water, but nothing was ever found. Nessie continued to play hide-and-seek with the hunters. Cryptozoologists are detectives who use scientific methods based on tracks, photos, films and eyewitness reports. A true Sherlock Ness, Steve is collecting an account from Ian, a former Scotland Yard police officer.
So you've had a sighting, Ian, yeah?
Yes, on the 15th of June, 1965, I, along with a friend, was fishing for brown trout on the south shore of Loch Ness, looking towards into Ushard Castle, into Ushard Bay. And when I saw the surface of the loch was broken by an object that looked exactly like an upturned boat. Indeed, I waited because I thought I might see some rescue craft coming out, because being a sergeant of police at the time, I thought this was an accident of some kind.
You were in the police then?
Yes, I was a sergeant of police at that time, but obviously, though people were on the other side, I didn't see any action of rescue, and then it simply disappeared. And I can't compare it to anything that I ever saw before.
This is what so many people say. This is the mystery of it, isn't it? That's what keeps coming up.
And it's large. It's big. It's big.
When I solve this mystery, then there's other lake monsters around the world. There's a good one in Canada that I'd like to go and look for. There's some in Scandinavia that I'd like to get involved with. And with the solution to this mystery behind me, then going off hunting for other monsters around the world, I'm quite happy. International monster hunter.
John Kirk is a happy man. The Town Council of Kelowna in British Columbia recently voted to place the monster of Lake Okanagan, the Ogopogo, on the protected species list.
I'm looking for the Ogopogo.
The Ogopogo is the most famous monster in Canada. Apparently, its name comes from a hit song of the 1920s. The creature, a member of the mega serpent family and a close cousin of the Loch Ness monster, apparently lives in Lake Okanagan, 450 kilometers from Vancouver. Despite a reward of $2 million for proving its existence, the Ogopogo has evaded all would-be hunters. At the head of his cryptozoology organization, John Kirk has been after the Ogopogo since he saw it in 1987.
This area has been so fertile in terms of sightings in the last 2 years that 80% of the sightings that have taken place on Okanagan Lake have taken place in this general area here, which I like to call Peachland Bay. Over there, hey, there, look. Okay, it's moving and it's, oh God, we have to get after that thing and find out exactly what that is. I can't believe it. Maybe it's what we're here for. It's really difficult to tell. Crikey. Ha! If that's Ogopogo, we're two lucky suckers, I tell you, honestly. Here again, see the phenomenon. Yeah, there you go, beautiful standing wave. It's just archetypal of what everybody thinks is an Ogopogo, but it's not, it's just us. It's just a beautiful set of humps and undulations and all that sort of rod.
This film shot from the bank clearly demonstrates the phenomenon. The passage of a motorboat on a lake forms a wake which creates waves with extraordinary shapes for several minutes. With a little imagination, you can see a monster very easily, but some witnesses have seen more than waves.
Al, what did you see in Okanagan Lake?
I saw an Ogopogo, just like that one. It was real exciting to see something like that. We didn't have a camera, and it's the first thing I wanted to get to. We had binoculars. It was not a fish, it was a big animal. It had to have had a long neck on it because it never made any sign like sway in the water behind like a snake made.
What were your feelings at the time you saw it?
Oh, the blood just came to a surface. It had to be an animal coming across the lake. We actually saw a little head. It was dark at the start when it was going sideways to us. When it came towards us, we couldn't see the head anymore. Came all the way across the lake, went down into the water. All of a sudden, it was diving back and forth. We just didn't know what to make of it. This is what we saw coming across the lake. It was a wave, just like about a 12-foot aluminum boat going about 20 miles an hour. That's how the animal would swim. There's no snake form behind it in the water.
An animal that's been extinct for 65 million years. It's called a plesiosaur. Is that what you think this creature is?
It comes out to be exactly this. What we figure it is a plesiosaurus, or one of the plesiosaurus family.
Ogopogo specialists believe it's a night animal. John organizes an underwater expedition to try to approach it.
What's visibility like down there? If you make visual contact with Ogopogo, gentlemen, please be ready for danger. I don't have visual contact presently with Rick. Where is he? Is he to your west? Do you read me? Over. Try going a little deeper to 35 meters and a slight bearing to the west, please.
But the Ogopogo, the mythical creature of Lake Okanagan, did not appear that night either. The legend continues.
Now, can you look at the F? The P?
Near Boston, Ricky Razdan and Alan Keeler have developed a system called eye tracking, a technical revolution which slaves the movement of the human eye to a computer. Their invention was born from tracking the Loch Ness monster in 1983. Eye tracking technology analyzes what the pupil does when you look at something and makes it possible to transform the eye and the brain into a super remote control. With this system, paraplegics can use computers. It replaces the mouse, and a fighter pilot can control a missile simply by looking at the target.
Sonar has been used for several years to plumb the depths of the loch. Interesting echoes have been recorded, but no proof of what caused them. The current crop of investigators includes both believers and unbelievers. The most impressive effort is being made by 2 American electronic engineers. Their large sonar array is designed to track any creature that ventures beneath it and bring back a piece of its flesh with remotely fired dart guns. So far, these bright young scientists have found nothing and don't believe anyone else has.
There's not a shred of scientific evidence to support the idea that there's a monster in the loch.
Rick and Alan, our 2 engineers, decide to do things on a big scale. This is the first time anyone has installed such an ambitious sonar array in Loch Ness. Their electronic hunt will last 7 weeks. Nessie had better perform. They decide to set up their system in Urquhart Bay, where apparently the monster usually appears. 144 sonars weighing in all over 15 tons broadcast ultrasounds to detect any moving object down to a depth of 33 meters. Whenever a movement is detected, electrical pulses appear on a 144-point grid. Targets over 3 meters long trigger the alarms and fire 9 dart guns. The darts remove a sample of skin from the beast. In fact, the only big catch during the program is a 1-meter-long sturgeon. And what if the monster of the Scottish Loch was simply a giant sturgeon? For some scientists specializing in Loch Ness, this is a distinctly plausible theory, for the truth is that Baltic sturgeons come to the loch each year to lay their eggs. This variety can reach up to 7 meters in length. In the summer heat, sturgeons swim near the surface, causing waves. Their protruding scales make them look like reptiles. On March 13, 1994, the Loch Ness myth was shot down in flames by startling revelations on the front page of the Sunday Telegraph. On his deathbed, a certain Christian Sperling confessed that the famous photo of the monster taken by Dr. Wilson in 1933 was a fake. It was actually a photo of a toy. The long neck and small head were made of putty. The model was fixed to a miniature submarine. The mock-up was just 30 centimeters high. It was the lens used on the camera that created the illusion. Elementary, my dear Wilson.
Spray painted black and drag it out of Loch Ness under the cameras. And
What's the difference in this photograph and the photograph you have? I thought they were the same.
Well, this photograph is the enhanced version of the flipper photograph that Robert Rines claims to have had enhanced at Jet Propulsion Laboratories. This is the actual photograph that we obtained from Jet Propulsion Labs. As you can see, it doesn't look anything like the flipper photograph. And they conclusively show that this is a fraudulent picture. So somewhere somebody's gone in and touched it up somehow to make it look like a flipper. We discovered in our research there at the loch that the camera and the sonar unit were not, as claimed in this article by Robert Rines, to be fixed to the bottom of the loch.
Yeah.
So, you know, really, this is just totally inconclusive evidence, and you can't base any kind of sound scientific conclusion on the actual evidence.
I can't understand why you guys haven't seen anything over there.
Well, we had our sonar array. We saw really nothing more than what you've seen here, just fish. We saw 3-foot fish, and we think that there's a level of expectation that you have when you go to the loch, that you're going to see something that would be the monster.
You know, the really amazing thing is that whenever there's a sonar, or even a person sees something, the camera fails, or the trace doesn't come out, or, you know, all the things that would lead you to believe that it's probably more a product of the human imagination than an actual phenomenon.
Well, with 6 years, we've never had a failure.
Well, I know, but you aren't looking for monsters.
Some people try to find mythical or unknown animals, others hunt for the DNA of extinct species to bring them back to life in the same way as Jurassic Park. The Tasmanian tiger, officially called the thylasin, died out in the early 20th century. The last specimen died in captivity in Hobart Zoo in 1936. Tigers attack farmer sheep. This is what led to their demise. In Tasmania, the only good tigers are dead ones. But some reports say that a few specimens have survived. For the last 15 years, Michael Archer's team at the Australian Museum have been trying to do the impossible, to resuscitate the embryo of a specimen pickled in alcohol since 1866. At the University of Jussieu in Paris, paleogenetics expert Eva Maria Gegel looks for DNA in fossils like the auroch, a prehistoric ox. For her, cloning the Tasmanian tiger is doomed to failure. It's as difficult as if we tried to bring an auroch fossil to life. You simply can't. I'm extremely skeptical about the outcome of their project because, in fact, the information we need, the information about the genetic makeup and the proteins, has mostly been lost. That's as true for fossils as it is for embryos pickled in alcohol. Actually, despite its reputation, alcohol is not a good preserving agent. The double helix of the DNA molecule of the Tasmanian tiger is going to be taken from a dead animal, and so will obviously be degraded. Bringing thylasin back to life means solving a very complex jigsaw puzzle with several thousand pieces. The DNA nucleotides, symbolized by sequences of letters like AGCT. The problem is that many pieces are missing or damaged. Moreover, you have to fit them in the right direction and the right place. But Professor Archer is sure that it's just a question of time before it works.
I'm an optimist that it will. See, I'm a paleontologist. I look backwards through time over the last 600 million years of creatures. And what I see is that there's one message we should take from that record. And life is an amazingly resilient thing. I just don't have any doubt in my mind that we will do it. The question really is not if, but when.
With huge resources and a lot of luck, it may be possible to complete the puzzle. But the cell egg containing all the information needed for the decoding will still be missing. In the Paris Natural History Museum, where Dr. Gegel is going today, this project begs a lot of questions. To clone the thylasin, you need a host for the DNA taken from the sample. The Australians want to use the Tasmanian devil, a closely related species. I think that success is quite improbable, because what they're trying to do is clone an extinct species of Tasmanian wolf from a surviving species, the Tasmanian devil. In fact, the two species diverged 16 to 25 million years ago, much longer than the difference between the chimpanzee and man. While waiting for resurrection, thylasin will continue to be an exhibit in a museum. In Vietnam, the inhabitants seem to concentrate more on their morning gymnastics than on the incredibly rich biodiversity of their country. However, Professor Tran Hong Viet and Professor Chuok actually prefer their recent zoological discovery, which has caused a revolution in the world of science, the Saola, to warm-ups. The Saola is a very rare species of wild mountain goat discovered in 1992 in the Vukwang Mountains in the middle of the country. The international scientific community was stunned by this new species, which is apparently 5 to 10 million years old. Protected for many years from contact with man, the forests of Vietnam abound with a very diverse flora and fauna, most of which has never been observed. Once when I traveled to Ha Tin, I discovered a skull hanging up in the home of a hunter. I immediately realized it came from a completely unknown species. I asked the hunter to bring me a specimen that was alive. He managed to trap one 6 months later. This is the Saola, an animal classified as a member of the antelope, sheep and goat family. In the wet forests of Ha Tin in the district of Vu Quang in the center of Vietnam, some specimens of the Saola may still be hidden. Professor Viet and Professor Tuok have come to palaver with the hunters of the village of Mansion to obtain a live Saola. Their idea is to try to breed Saolas in captivity. Do you know this animal? Yes, we do. We call it the Saola. We call it the Son Duong, the mountain goat, and the Wildlife Office called it the Saola. Do you still see them often? No, we don't often see them now. We would like you to catch us a live Saola so we can breed it. Could you do that? It's possible, if the Forest Wildlife Office agrees. We'll fix it with them. We will return the animal to the forest when we've finished. This is the sort of trap we'd use to catch it alive. Put an obstacle in front of the trap so that the noose. The Saola primarily lives in the forests in the center and north of the country, still largely unexplored by scientists. The locals hunt them for food, but the Forest Wildlife Office has now put them on the protected species list. The few Saolas captured by men have not survived for long in captivity. In Vu Quang province, the ecological balance remained stable for millions of years. This is how the Saola survived. The total number, including those in Laos, is probably somewhere between 200 and 2,000. At Hanoi University, Professor Tran Hong Viet runs a research center in which all the top zoologists in Vietnam work. Their objective is to discover, classify and protect new species of animals. They've been working extremely hard in the field for several years, although they seem relaxed. Our meeting today aims to present your research on unknown species, so the simplest way is to ask each of you to present your results. We recently published 7 new species of fish, but there are well over 20 results which have not yet been released, including this unknown eel caught at Thac Bar in the north of Vietnam. The body is covered in white spots and it has long spines on the back. Another feature is that it has more vertebrae than any other known species of eel. This is a new species of lizard discovered by scientific fieldwork. The largest was found in Huong Song in the province of Ha Tin in 1998. Here are 2 specimens of this new species of lizard. The smaller was discovered in 1999 in the south, in Quang Nam province. Professor Viet has been looking for one of Vietnam's legendary creatures for over 20 years. He possesses the only cast in the world of its footprint. Here is the only cast of the foot of Ngoi Rung, the man-monkey of Vietnam, found in Chu Mom Ray in the district of Lê Gia Com Tum. Up until now, we've discovered 2 kinds of Ngoi Rung in Vietnam. One is very big and the other is smaller. Neither of them uses fire, and neither of them has a language. Our center continues research in this region to protect this precious genetic heritage. And the discovery of a large unknown mammal like the Saola has convinced Professor Viet that the Ngoyi Rung will be his next scientific victory. Symbolizing Vietnam, the Saola, like other new species, is threatened by indiscriminate deforestation and the black market in rare species. Unless they obtain sufficient resources, the Vietnamese scientists will not be able to protect their biological gold mine. From the seas of Asia to the Canadian Atlantic, French scientists from Ifremer are the first to examine new species brought back by marine expeditions before they are sent to the zoologists at the Paris Natural History Museum. At Ifremer in Brest, Michel Segonzac characterizes many unknown fauna which live in the ocean depths. A strange world about which less is known than our knowledge of the surface of the Moon or the planet Mars. From time to time, Michel Segonzac goes to a rather special market at Port-Conquet near Brest. On this visit, he strikes lucky. Jean-Philippe has caught an odd beast in his nets. Look, we caught this 2 or 3 days ago. What sort of fish is that? It's called a chimera, or rather a rhino chimera. Rhino means it has a long nose. It's very rare. You must have been fishing deep. If you don't want it, I'd like to keep it for the Ifremer collection. Okay, why not? Thank you. Paradoxically, it's our geologists who bring us back the best images of unknown animals, because their dives explore the bottom for 2, 3 or 4 kilometers, which increases their chances of a contact. We have submarines which can resist the enormous pressures encountered 6,000 meters below the surface. No light penetrates to those depths, so you need enough power to feed lights to see and film the seabeds. From time to time, unidentified monsters swim into the path of the underwater robots. Cousins of Dumbo the elephant living in the depths of the ocean. That evening in Brest, Michel Segonzac is visiting his friend Alain, an old sea dog who has seen and done everything. He hopes to surprise him with pictures of an extraordinary creature. I do not believe we shall discover marine monsters like Jules Verne's fictional giant squid, but there are other wonderful mysteries to reveal, like an unknown squid we found with long, slim arms several meters in length. A truly exceptional animal that no one had ever seen before, that has never been caught, and of which virtually nothing is known. The biodiversity of our planet is considerable, with the number of animal species estimated to be from 10 to 60 million. Every year, 5,000 to 8,000 new species are listed. But a precise inventory is impossible, because most of the unknown animals live in the ocean depths, where unsuspected reality is very much stranger than fiction.